Are live on all of our channels. And yes, we are live. Okay, good deal. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I'm your host, Rico Muhammad. My co-host, Chuck Snow, is down below. Welcome back to the
thank you, Rico. It's great to be back.
Yes, how was the podcasters conference that you went to?
Okay, so I got there. You and I haven't had a chance to talk because we've both been busy. And I just got back from France yesterday morning at 1 o'clock in the morning. I got over to Tignes, France, only to find out that the conference that we had paid for was in French. I never thought of it because I saw names, they weren't all French, but I'm used to seeing French names. And I walked in and there's not a word of English. So luckily there was really good skiing there. So I went skiing. And the skiing was incredible.
Made the best out of a good situation.
Yes. And if you notice, Rico, I put the money back and I paid for it myself because I didn't think that the Rates and Lanes should pay for Chuck Snow to go skiing because I really wasn't. My intentions were good, but damn it, I made lemonade out of lemons.
Good deal. Well, I wanted to tonight kind of change gears and shift since we're both coming back, and here lately, of course, we're both active on Instagram. We're both a little bit active in social media. And we've been seeing something that's been going on a lot in our industry. Is now there's been a lot of I mean no disrespect to anybody, but I'm gonna call them fly by night gurus that have been. Everybody is an expert now, and everybody's telling people how trucking is a great industry, and it is. But they're selling people a dream of that trucking is a get rich quick and you can't lose any money, and I think that's a huge disservice to a lot of people. And I think that a lot of people, unfortunately, have already kind of taken the bait on the situation and have gotten involved in the trucking industry. And now, when things have gotten as tough as they have gotten, now people are starting to see and experience that the trucking industry is not for the faint of heart. When I first got started in the trucking industry, they told me, if you want to make a huge fortune in trucking, if you want to make let me correct it. They said if you want to make a small fortune in trucking, you got to start out with a huge fortune because of how much money.
It's true. There's a lot of Rico. We all hear about the ones that did real well. We don't hear about the failures because nobody celebrates them. But there's been, I've watched through the years the body counts, okay, of people that have ventured into this business that had no business going into this business. They didn't have business savvy. They didn't know anything about trucking. Listen, I started out that way. It was different. I didn't know anything about trucking, but I was young and I had business training only because I had been in a family business and then started my own business when I was in junior high that I ran for years and understood business, which a lot of people don't. Because if you look at where historically truckers usually come, the ones that come from the farm, which are getting fewer and fewer.
Yep.
The good old boys that we used to get from Iowa and Nebraska and Wyoming, that whole industry is changing, and it's getting very similar to trucking in ways where the big guys are dominating. Your Cargill and all the rest of them. They're just and you have multinational farm companies. So we're not getting those farm boys. So the farm boys were a little bit different, but other than the farm boys, I think for the most part, we get our recruits for trucking historically through truck drivers that want to become business people, or we get them from mechanics that want to become business people, and they know how to. These guys actually do know how to fix a truck and know how to drive it. Doesn't necessarily mean they know anything about running a business, turning a wrench and driving a truck, and they're all different specialties. And I got to tell you, I've seen more load brokers lose their shirts by thinking that they are going to cut out the middleman and they are going to run their own fleet. And I've seen it take some real big ones down, because this is something you can't just wake up one morning and having gone out and bought 100 trucks and you're going to run a trucking company. It doesn't work that way.
Right. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on here on the Rates and Lanes podcast, we try to share with everyone real actionable advice, real world experience, not just, anybody can come on here. And I think that a lot of people have been complaining really bad about how the brokers are, the rates and everything. And that does you no good. There's only a couple of things that can change your situation. And you need to be solutions oriented. You can't be worried about how bad or how much, you need to improve your negotiating skills. That's one thing that you can absolutely do. How do you improve your negotiating skills? Read books, listen to audio books, sign up for a course. And when I say sign up for a course that's through a reputable organization, someone that has real credentials, not just not and oftentimes you can sign up through accredited institutions such as the TIA, which is the the gold standard when it comes to brokers. That's
100%.
where every broker wants to have that TIA accreditation. But they have courses. If you want to understand and know what it is to be a broker, it seems as if you would go through the organization that is the gold standard for brokers. Versus going out and signing up and with someone that and oftentimes the TIA courses, if you go and Google and get on their websites, is a hell of a lot cheaper than some of the prices I've seen advertised for these different courses that some people are out here touting. I mean, I've seen people touting courses for $3,200, this, that, the third, and you can easily get into a course on TIA's website for maybe half of that price. It may take you, and they're not going to sell you the pie in the sky, get rich quick. They're going to actually tell you and show you actionable steps to really get involved and understand what it is that brokering is really about. And a lot of times, education is the key to changing your situation. Sometimes you can't, experience is the best teacher, as they say.
100%. And learn, a lot of these courses that are offered through Instagram to get rich quick, become a freight broker. I'll give me a weekend of your time and I will show you the freight brokerage industry and you'll go away and you'll make millions of dollars.
You can't learn this in a weekend.
Yeah. Well, the real truth of it, boys and girls, is that if you take a course like the TIA course, they will teach you how to broker freight. Then your next thing is you're not going to open up a load broker service because you're going to probably fail. Then once you've taken that course, you can probably get a job working for a reputable load broker.
Right.
And then learn the ropes and make your mistakes on somebody else's money.
That's like truck.
Yes, identical. When you're first driving a truck, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be hard on equipment. You may smack the side of a car. All those things. You may wreck some tires. All these things happen. Okay, it's real life. You end up doing something dumb and you end up with a couple flat tires because you didn't check air pressure. They're all rookie mistakes. But if you're working for somebody, you usually make the mistake on their dime. I'm not saying it's fair or right, but that's how it works.
Right.
Where if you borrowed $5,000 from your mother-in-law for a down payment on a truck and you don't really know what you're doing and you wreck some tires, or could be a lot worse. The one I see a lot with people that have bought trucks and buy reefers, that don't know the reefer business, don't really know. They know how to drive a truck proficiently. I'll give them credit for that. Okay, they can run through a 10 or 13 or 18 speed gearbox with the rest of them, but they may not know the reefer business, which is as peculiar a business as flatbeds are. It's not just a box that keeps things cold. Um, there's an art to loading. There's an art to checking your load. There's all sorts of things, and a lot of times we saw people that shouldn't have been in the business. They were new, and they bought an older reefer, and it worked. They got into the produce shed. They loaded a load of berries. They were fine, and then up the road, the reefer cut out, and a load of berries got cooked.
Well,
And
one of the biggest things that I've seen that really scares the bejesus out of me is someone that gets into the trucking industry. They buy a truck or two, and they don't even have a CDL. They don't even
yes,
know how to drive a truck. And
yep,
people are taught it. People are saying, "Hey, we got these turnkey operations." And if you are truly a business person, a serial entrepreneur, okay, but trucking is a little bit of a different beast, and drivers are definitely a different beast. And
oh, yeah,
there's no way in hell that I would have. You have to have countermeasures in place. You got to drive in a truck, and he gets out in Arkansas, and all of a sudden he gets homesick or decides that he's tired of driving your truck and leaves that truck out in West Memphis, Arkansas, somewhere.
that happens. Listen, there's not a trucking company in the world that has not had a truck abandoned at some time. It
Right.
just it happens. Okay, if you live long enough, you see everything. There used to be. I know that now things I hope have gotten better, and I don't know, um, with some of the big carriers. But I remember years ago with one of the big carriers, and I'm not going to mention their name, but they are out of the Arkansas area. They had a team of drivers that used to fly around all over Canada and United States
Right.
picking up abandoned trucks, because this was back in the day when these guys, it was just recent post deregulation. It was the Wild West. They were they were taking on a lot of business they probably shouldn't have, and they were hiring a lot of people to drive those trucks that they probably shouldn't have, and they didn't have the training, and they didn't at the time they didn't have any of the technology where they could keep an eye on things. They didn't have the satellite tracking yet. It
And
was
well,
all,
and it's a couple of things. When you get in the trucking industry and you don't know, you're not sure of what one, let's say the mileage, the miles per gallon your truck should be getting,
yeah,
and you got a driver out there that understands that, and he's pissed off. He may feel like you're not paying him as much as you should be paying him, and he gets out there at the truck stop, and he's selling fuel that you're paying for. He's selling
yeah,
fuel to other drivers. He's pissed off. Hey, that for whatever reason, a shipper may have pissed him off or whatever, and now he wants to quit. Well,
yep,
not only is he selling your fuel, but hell, he has your truck, and you may have brand new rubber on that truck. Hey, let me sell these tires. And I mean,
Rico, I have
it's
seen.
far fetched, but
You're
it
you're
all
100% right. I've seen it all. I've seen a guy. Now he wasn't working for me, but he was pissed off at his boss, and he was selling parts off the truck. He was going
so
to get even. I've seen them. We've had them work for us years ago. That a city driver we caught stealing fuel, and he was a guy that had a decent reputation, but I think he had a gambling problem or something that surfaced. All these things happen, and we made a policy at Traffics years ago that we would not hire any owner operator that did not drive the truck himself or herself. That was it.
And
If
so let me be clear on that. We're not doing this show to be dream killers or nothing like that. But what we are, I think that we've seen a lot of people that they like I said, they're selling this big fuzzy picture, and I think that it would serve well for people to understand the flip side of the coin. There is a dark side to the moon, as they say, and you need to understand that everything is not always peaches and cream, and people are out here. The biggest thing that gets me is find out if you're interested in the trucking industry. Find out the publications of trucking. Find out what are the accredited publications. What are like your transport topics,
Yeah.
your overdrive magazines, this, that, and the third. And if these quote unquote so-called gurus are so proficient and great at what it is that they're doing, they would more than likely have some kind of interactions with these top publications.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, and when you went to trade shows like Matt's that's coming up at the end of the month, um, the gurus are there lecturing.
right.
Okay, if there's somebody out there that's actually selling other than the TIA or one of those groups, but if there's somebody out there that's actually selling services and how to get rich in the truck brokerage industry, um, and it really worked, they would be at Matt's telling people how to get rich quick in the truck brokerage industry.
And like I said, I'm far be it to begrudge anybody out here trying to make a dollar,
No,
and make a dollar in a legal and righteous way. Hey, I'm more power to you, but I want to. I hate the hustle mentality when it comes to beating somebody. I think that a lot of times like I said, they're not giving you all of the different things that you may need to understand or know to be really successful in the industry. They're just telling you all of the great things, all of the good things, but they're not giving you a full scope and understanding of what this industry really brings. And I think it does a big disservice when that happens, because people are staking their entire life savings, what or whatever that they may have, whatever money. I mean, you got people that went out and got EIDL loans and PPP
yes,
loans, and now those notes are coming due, and
yes,
and if you don't have the ability um, to service that debt, going out and running up personal debt, business credit debt. At the end of the day, you still a person guaranteeing that debt, but you're running out and you're getting yourself into a situation to where it really is going to turn ugly for you if you don't have the wherewithal to survive and make the returns back on all the money that you have invested and spent. And that's the biggest thing that nothing kind of hurts me so much is when people call and say, um, they've got other family members to invest in them and bought
yeah.
trucks, and now the truck is broken down, and they're trying to basically rob Peter to pay Paul to keep something going, and it's not going to. It's not a um, you can't survive that way.
No, and the risk, you know what? I'm not here with you tonight trying to talk anybody out of getting into the trucking or brokerage sectors. What I am here is to share information. We need to share the information with our listeners about the truth of the matter. Like, just we need to not sell a dream here, but we're selling a reality.
True cautionary tale, and I've neglected. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but please like, share, and subscribe to the video. If you want to get involved, you can type a comment. Other than Instagram, if you're watching this on Instagram, we don't. Instagram doesn't have the technology for that to transfer over to where we can see it. But if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or any of the other platforms that we're streaming to, we can see if you type if you got to type a comment in the comment section, we will see it and we can get it. If you got a question, we love to get involved and answer your question as best we possibly can. Or if you got a comment, we love to hear your comment as well. With that being said, like I said, going back to the whole thing of people getting involved in the industry. This has been a great industry for me personally. You can make a nice living. There's no better profitable situation than one guy, one truck. You know what I mean?
I
The
agree.
profit that you can make, if you want to grow bigger than that, the possibilities are there for you to be able to do that.
You better have a stomach for it, though. That's, you know what,
Yes.
you're 100% right. And I got to tell you, I remember at one point I was running 15 trucks in a brokerage service, and there were days, and I thought to myself, my God, I could make more money with one truck driving it myself.
Yep.
But I was committed to a terminal, and I was committed to 15 drivers, and I was committed to a bunch of people working in sales and brokerage, and that wasn't, and I just kept going. And that's what you need to have, that commitment and that burning desire in your heart and your soul that you're going to make it, and you're not gonna, you have to be careful not to do stupid stuff when your back gets against the wall, because I think that's when people do it's their reactionary behaviors when
So
they get into a jam, and let's just say, because I just had it today, a truck, one of the trucks that I own privately, and I lease I just leased the truck to someone, and I just got a bill for an automatic transmission. It wasn't even the full transmission. That was $15,000. Now, I was able to cut the check. That's not a problem. But I know that there are people out there that would have bought that truck during the heyday, and now things have come down to a real reality that if they got that $15,000 bill, they're screwed.
right. And one thing that we're going to do tonight, we're going to talk about as well, because we always pride ourselves, like I say, giving you solutions. We're not here to talk about just all bad things or complain and stuff like that. So for the people that are talking about with the low boards, you're not getting the rates and everything else, we got some real practical solutions to help you out. Because like I said, negotiating is one thing. Learning and increasing your negotiating skills. There's a book. You can get it on Audible. I just finished listening to it, as a matter of fact. Never Split the Difference. This was a book written by the FBI, an FBI negotiator,
Wow.
a hostage negotiator. So can you think of a more high pressure situation than negotiating for life, somebody's life? So this guy, it was an excellent book. Go grab that book. Go check that out. Like I said, it's called Never Split the Difference, because you don't want to. And so he gives really great practical advice and different tips on what you can do in a negotiating situation. A lot of times people don't utilize the network that they have.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we've talked about getting direct customers. Well, how do I do that? Well, a lot of times you got to talk about your business. This is one of the things that definitely I miss our good friend George
God
Hay.
bless him.
One thing that he definitely would always make sure that he would mention whenever we would have him on the show. He always talked about talking about what it is that you do, because you never know who knows who, what kind of connections that they have and who they can put you in contact with.
George, though, fairness, okay, and I said this to him once, George, may rest in peace. He was making it sound pretty easy to get direct customers. And you got to remember, George he was a lot of things. He was he was a trained zoologist
Right.
to start with, and he had a love for animals. He had a love for trucks, and he put them together, and he was hauling zoo animals. And then somehow he got a job for one of the big LTL carriers that have incredible training. And I said to George one night after the show, I said, George, you're like an NFL player, former NFL player, talking to a bunch of junior high school kids and expecting them to play as well as you do. These people they don't have the training or the experience. Number one, you're a really smart guy. Number two, you've had some great sales training.
Right.
These guys, they turned wrenches or they drove a truck. They haven't had that training. So if you really want direct customers, damn it, go. If you really want to try that, you need to hone your sales skills.
Right. That's what we're
And there's
talking about.
tons. Yeah, how bad do you want it? And the one thing about our listeners, for the most part, other than the ones that are in the office or the load broker listeners we have, but the driver and owner operator listeners that listen to this show, they've got a lot of time behind the wheel that they could do all sorts of wonderful things with, whether it's learn another language or business skills. Like, you're sitting behind that wheel for hours on end. And if you're there and you learn something, hone those. You really want, how bad do you want those direct customers?
Right.
Bad enough to take some good sales courses, and none of this stuff was available. There's all sorts of other publications that are geared to, like audio publications that are geared to our industry, that people can listen to, that are at our fingertips, and they're not that expensive. When, going back to when I got in, there was nothing. There really was nothing as far as education. Your education was in the yard, listening to another driver, or on the CB radio, or when you got to a truck stop or a diner and listening to what some old guy was telling you. I hate to say it, but half the time, some of those guys just gave you shitty advice.
Absolutely.
You can
And so and that's the thing. Get invest in yourself. Invest in yourself. Spend that time. Like I say, audiobooks is a great resource. Podcast, excellent resource. YouTube, excellent resources. There are different things that are out there, and all of these things are free. Another great resource, LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. Get your profile up. Find the industries that it is that you want to that you are participating in. If you're in trucking, get in the transportation groups. If you're in refrigerated, if you haul reefers, there are all kind of different sectors on LinkedIn. Start networking on LinkedIn to build up. You start looking at companies. If you've seen companies, you know that there's a company right there in your backyard. Type that company into LinkedIn. That is going to put you in contact with, you'll start to be able to see, well, who is the procurement manager, so on and so forth. Reach out, see what kind of groups you can see. Maybe they're a participant in a different group. You can get into that group and start to just talk about different things of your experience in that group, so that if they happen to be going through LinkedIn, then you start to, if they see you participating in different forums and stuff like that, then that puts you in a position of an expert almost, because hey, you're on there talking about your experience and everything like that, and you're willing to participate in the forums, then that gives you a strong amount of credibility. And this person that has the ability to potentially get a contract with them, you endear yourself to them by participating in different things, and that could possibly open up a door.
100%. But this, like, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And you've got to if you really want direct customers, you've got to make yourself known in these circles. And we're living in a different world today. Now, it's harder. And, I know this from experience. I beat on enough doors and made enough calls in my day. It's harder than ever to get direct customers. And I will cut everybody a pass there, because how the real world works.
Right.
Okay, this is the real world. They want your big shippers, they want to just download all their shipments to one source, whether it doesn't matter who it is, maybe two, and they're in the business of making widgets or furniture or food product. That's what they do. The days of having shippers that spend their whole time, or traffic managers or logistics managers, beating up truckers for a nickel, they're gone.
Well, and the other thing about getting a direct shipper too is you better be sure that that's really what you want. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you have a direct shipper, they don't care about your vacation coming up.
No,
they got product to ship. So if you go out and you get a direct shipper, if you land a direct shipper, then guess what? What did that do to your vacation? You are beholden to your customer. Everybody has a boss, whether you own your own business or not. You're beholden to your customer. So you can't necessarily say, well, I'm going to, I want to take this time off. This is the beauty of having a relationship with a broker. If you have a broker and you can develop that relationship with that broker, and how do I want to say this? Develop that relationship to the point to where you are servicing their customers so well that they don't want to give that freight to anybody else. They're not necessarily out here trying to find the cheapest rate, the cheapest truck. They want someone that's going to service the hell out of their customer, and they know that they can count on you. But that takes that's another skill set that you have to develop, that you have to work on to be able to build that relationship with the broker. And so now that gives you the ability so that if you want to have a vacation or have a personal life or something, like something comes up, then that gives you the ability to be able to work with your broker partner and say, hey, I'm taking a week off, and they kind of got you covered, and you come back in and you jump right back, you jump right back in the groove. And I'm sure
Yeah.
Chuck can tell you all about that because that's what he's done.
It's funny. We have a friend. You and I have a friend of ours from Nebraska, Ted Johnson, Elite Special Commodities. Now, I remember Ted telling us that he had his direct customer. He was hauling flatbeds at the time, and it was a steel company. And he was one man, and he owned two trucks. And I said, "Well, how does that work?" He said, "I keep a spare because it's an older truck. It can and it will break down, and I can't let them down." And Ted has built. He's a young guy. I don't think he's 30 years old, and I think he's got about 10 trucks now.
Right.
So Ted thinks outside the box. And if you want direct customers, you can have them. The best situations I ever see with truckers, with direct customers, you don't want to be there. The big shippers are going to use whoever, Coyote, JB Hunt, Traffics, whoever, download all their shipments and they're done. Okay. But they always want one guy that's their special guy. Okay. It might be for special projects. It may be just, they want to have that guy so that on Friday night, when that broker calls and says, "Listen, I'm having problems covering that last load. Carrier dropped me. He's not empty yet." They want to have their own guy, sort of thing. And there are those relationships available. But you know what? In today's market, with the way things are and with voicemail and people don't answer emails, certainly they will not answer solicitation emails, that people are just inundated with them. But if you belong to these groups, especially on LinkedIn, you have a good chance of meeting one of these and becoming just their local guy, or their special guy that every plant needs. Every big plant needs a guy like that.
And like you said, thinking outside of the box, coming up with being able to come up with solutions on the fly, being that person that can solve a problem, and maybe even taking one on the chin. I know a lot of times people don't want to do that. But sometimes it may be something to be able to develop the relationship. You have to be able to talk to a person and say, "Hey, what's the worst load you got? What's your problem? Where does the problem lie? How can I come up with a solution for the thing that's your bugaboo?" And if you can do that, if you can provide a solution based of results for the thing that they have the most trouble with, then that automatically puts you at the top of mind. They're gonna always think about, hey, this guy, he came up with solutions or whatever. He had. I thought that this was gonna be a problem, but it wasn't. It wasn't necessarily. That's the benefit of having, like you talked about. You just said with Ted having multiple trucks or having multiple trailers. I had a situation similar to that with a customer where for some odd reason the scheduling got messed up and the load didn't deliver on. When you go on to deliver into Costco's and these Walmarts and stuff like that, the load didn't deliver on the day that they had it in there for some odd reason. They had messed up they messed up the delivery date. Well, he was like the broker that I was dealing with. He really was kind of caught flat-footed, and I was like, "Hey, no problem," because he knew that, oh boy, this is getting ready to cost me a bunch of money because
Sure.
it was a mistake on their end. but I didn't bend him. I didn't make him grab his ankles. I tried to negotiate what I felt was a fair price for myself. I had an extra trailer sitting there, so I wasn't just out of dead in the water myself because I had the extra trailer.
Right.
So I was able to go drop the load, uh, get it delivered on the proper day. Made a couple of extra dollars, of course, because it was a refrigerated load. But was able to make a couple of extra dollars by sitting on it for a day or two. But at the same time, I wasn't just dead in the water because I had the extra trailer, so I was able to continue to do what it was that I did. Luckily, the load was delivering here in Atlanta, in my home where I'm based out of. So I had somewhere to park that trailer, and so everything worked out. But like I say, if you can come up with different creative solutions and provide those, people will definitely always remember that. And
You're 100% right. But the one thing I want to warn my listeners, there's a difference between providing solutions to somebody, and you do have people out there that are looking to abuse people, abuse truckers, and you don't want to deal like those toxic shippers. They they're still out there, and the world hasn't lost all of them, unfortunately. But when you run into one of those, you're never going to please the guy, and he's always going to, for some reason, they want to rip you off. And it's usually now, these are smaller companies. The big guys, they want to get their product to market. It's the little guy that doesn't have a lot of shipments and he's struggling himself. So he's the guy that will, or the girl, that will beat carriers up and take advantage. I remember when I was really green in this business, we were running loads out of Louisville, Kentucky, back up to Toronto, and it was loads of synthetic rubber. And the customer's son, the customer himself he was a tough old guy, but he was a fair guy. And the kid was always trying to show his dad he was a tough guy too, by taking advantage of people. And the old man was a fair guy, but the kid was just kind of like, it was the big dog, little dog. And the kid called me one day and said to me, I need you to take a load to Edmonton. And I said, I don't send trucks to Edmonton. And he said, well, I really need you to move this load for me. I said, but we don't go there, because Edmonton, especially it's not great right now, but especially in those days, was horrible. He said, listen, I'll pay you well. I said, well, what's well? He said, between 4 and 5. Now, we always worked on between 4 and 5 meant between $4,000 and $5,000.
Right.
So I said, all right, I'll move it for you. And I found a guy to do it for like $3,500. And I charged him $4,500. And I thought, well, I'll make $1,000. That's pretty damn good. I sent him the bill. And he calls me. He said, what, are you crazy? What do you mean? He said, what's this bill? $4,500, Toronto to Edmonton, Alberta. I said, well, we talked. And you said you were willing to pay between 4 and 5. And I split it down the middle to be fair. And he said, no. In my business, I talk about pennies per pound. I said, what? Are you joking? And I took about a $2,500 hit. I never forgot that.
Wow.
But that's a sort of, they weren't a big company. They actually ended up going bankrupt. Once the old man died and the kid ran it for enough years, I believe they went bankrupt. Well after I stopped doing business with them. But those are the sort of characters that cost you a lot of money. And you want to deal with people that respect what you do. That's really important, whether you're dealing with a direct customer or you're dealing with a broker. And Absolutely. There are brokers out there that turn them and burn them. They don't care. They will give you a load. You do a great job and they'll give it to you every week. And then one week you don't get it. And you phone the broker and you say, hey, am I not getting my load this week? And they go, no, we got somebody that's, $30 cheaper.
Yeah.
And that's not right.
Yeah. And when that happens, like you say, a lot of times that they'll be needing you. And that's where you know, that's where that adversarial relationship kind of kicks in. That and really, you know, ladies and gentlemen, don't want to be dealing with, if at all possible, when you're running on the load board, you don't want to be dealing with a ton of brokers. You
No,
want to try to get that thing down to a select few, maybe a handful of good brokers that's gonna develop your lane, develop where you're going to be working. Find the brokers that work in that, operate in that lane, and you can't be all things to all people.
no,
If you one truck, you can't compete with Schneider. You can't compete with JB Hunt. Um, you got to understand what it is that you can compete on and what you can do, what kind of value you can provide, and understand that's the thing that you got to be thinking about as well when you're negotiating. Think about the value that you're providing. Don't negotiate and just say, is that the best you can do?
no.
Uh, Sit down one day and really just come up with, just brainstorm with different ways to ask questions when you're negotiating. And it's difficult to negotiate when you are driving. Very difficult to negotiate a load when you're driving, because your mind is running 1,000 miles per second, because you're looking at all the different things that you're doing that you have to be aware of when you're on the road, paying attention to traffic, watching your mirrors, all of that stuff. And then you're distracted because you're trying to calculate numbers and distances and where this picks up at, and when you're going to miss something. So if at all possible, try to make sure that when you're negotiating or dealing with anything, that you have time to be able to concentrate on what it is that you're doing. Um,
Great advice. And Rico, I just want to add something. If you're negotiating while you're driving, first of all, I don't think you're driving very safely. I don't care if you have 8 headsets on. That's number one. Number two, we all know that cell service is not always as good as it can be. Um, if you're negotiating and your customer can't hear you, or you can't hear your customer, you've lost your advantage in the negotiation already.
Right. And you got to be able to understand, like I said, understand what it is that you are negotiating. You have to ask unorthodox questions sometimes so that you can get that person thinking. But now, let me put it this way. Sometimes you're going to deal with the broker that's just going to be down and dirty. They're negotiating strictly off of price, and
Yeah.
and and that's the only thing that they're doing. There are some instances to where you can work that, you still can work that situation, but you have to understand one of the key things that I picked up on, and we already knew this before as well, but understanding deadlines. Understanding deadlines. If a load has to be, if a broker's calling you and it's 1 o'clock, that load has to be picked up by 3. He's dealing with a finite amount of time. So what is it that now you have a way to be able to negotiate? If that broker is calling you, say for instance, if the broker is calling you on that Friday, and it's getting late in the day, it's getting a little late in the day, you have a little bit of more negotiating power in your back pocket. You have to understand the different nuances that come along with, if you're just down and dirty price and you're not really trying to look at any kind of value proposition. You got to understand those things when you're dealing with the negotiation. Um,
Rico, I, 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 I totally agree, but I think you end up getting down and dirty when you get into areas where you have no business being. Okay,
True.
when you're in Miami,
That's that
Florida, with a dry
relationship.
box in July, you know what? You're at everybody's mercy. When you're down in Dade or Broward counties,
Right.
with a dry box, what are you negotiating with? Like there's really, and that's where you need to, in order to negotiate. Your starting point is you better understand your own business. You better understand your own cost structure. You have
Understanding
no
your
business.
numbers.
You have no strength in your negotiations if you don't know what it costs you. And that, I have to say, is a real weakness that I find quite often with so many single independent operators, and even owner operators that are leasing on with a company. When I say to them, "What does it cost you a mile for fuel or a kilometer?" Well, I don't figure it out. Well, you better effing figure it out, because
Right.
that's like the basis. You better know what it costs you per mile or kilometer for insurance. You got to break those costs down, because that's what you're selling.
That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest hurdle that a lot of people do not do. Like I say, most people just think, "Hey, I got more. It's the end of the week and I got money."
Yeah,
And
you know what? It's the end of the week, and you made a bunch of money because you were lucky. You got unloaded in time. You got loaded. There was no traffic. The truck didn't break down. You didn't have a huge headwind in front of you somewhere, or crosswind. So you did okay on fuel, and fuel happened to be down a little bit that week. You had a great week, and the next week the damn truck breaks down. And a broker or a customer sent you to go load a load, supposed to be ready at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it wasn't ready till midnight, and you've been up all day.
right.
And then they punish you because you didn't get the thing on time to the market. That's real life. But if where do people, let's walk backwards. Where do people get into trouble in our industry? When they start doing things that they're not familiar with.
Yep.
That seems to be the common thread of disaster. When somebody that's green, okay, decides in July that they don't understand what they're doing, and they do take that load down to Miami from Chicago, and they think they've done so well because they got $2.50 a mile.
And then the reality kicks in, trying to get loaded coming back out of Miami.
That's right. And they have to run 500 miles back up to Georgia somewhere to get their backhaul. That's already depressed.
Right.
Because the melons have already moved up to North Carolina at this point, or South Carolina. So there's nothing in Georgia for a dry box. And I think the other thing that we're running into now, and I was just talking to one of our associates the other night, that sends us information on rates. He was saying, I think maybe there's hope. I think maybe the dry van market has hit bottom. And he said, and the good news is we had great activity at month end. And I said, well, I think this is going to be first of all, I do not believe for a second we've hit bottom. Okay. You'll know when we hit bottom. We ain't there yet. And one of the reasons I believe that is because we had so many new people come on board, so many new carriers. And we won't hit bottom until a lot of them leave.
Yeah. And the herd is starting to thin, unfortunately.
Yeah.
A lot of people are losing their business. You're starting to see truck prices come back down to earth.
Used truck prices, you know what? I understand the new truck market's still pretty tough because there's such you've got companies like, all the big guys, Werner, Hunt, Swift, all the rest of them they're way past their trade-in recycles. And, they got a pent up demand. They've got to replace those trucks because their business model is to keep a truck for, let's say, 4 years on average.
Right.
And now all of a sudden they've kept them for 7 in a lot of cases. So they'll get served. And because they buy huge volume, they'll take literally hundreds of trucks all spec'd the same way. The manufacturers love that. They're not worried about they don't want to deal with a Rico or a Chuck.
Right.
But we want this rear end, and we want this engine, and we want this color, and get out of here. I don't want to deal with you. So, that's the other thing. The good thing, I think, is that in some cases on the used trucks, there's still going to be, I see prices are starting to come down, but there's still a good demand for them because there's so many trucks that have to be replaced.
Did you get a chance, Chuck, trying to shift gears a little bit? I sent you a little something on Instagram. I don't know if you got a chance to see it with the automated loader.
Yes, I commented on it, okay, where it was an LTL, one of the LTL carriers, and they pulled off the 24 pallets or whatever on a great big super pallet, let's call it. Now, this is an idea I've thought of myself, but in reality, it was a great Instagram post. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that didn't see it, I think if you look under, I think it was our friend Dean Croak, the Grumpy Pete, posted it, if I'm not mistaken. And what it was, imagine this super pallet that is 48 or 53 feet long, and it's got 24 or 26 pallets on it and other freight. And instead of unloading all 26, you just unload one 53-foot pallet. The problem with that is most terminals aren't big enough.
I tell you, I think that, of course, I don't think it's anything that we have to worry about in our lifetime, but the AI is definitely going to be affecting the industry. I think we most of us that are in the industry now will be long gone before it actually takes significant market share. But I just thought that was really fascinating.
It was. It's a great idea. The problem is, as I commented, everything is about cost. If real estate, if you bought a great big terminal on each end, then it's a great idea. It's a huge time saver if you could buy a great big terminal really cheap on both ends. Okay, but if you got to pay top dollar for industrial real estate, then labor and propane, or however you run most people run their lift trucks on propane. They're the lesser of two evils for cost. So all decisions are made by bean counters. That's right. Who makes the decision, and whatever's cheaper, they do. That is, right. I remember when we were out shopping for and we were speccing trailers, and I really had my heart set on speccing some trailers with disc brakes. And I remember calling I called a few of the big carriers that I know and got their opinions. And I remember one company I called, very well known, very well run company in Utah. And I remember speaking to their vice president of maintenance and asking him what they were doing, if they were using disc brakes or not. And he said, "My God, Chuck," he said, if it were up to me, because I run the maintenance department, I would only buy disc brakes. But the people that run this organization are bean counters. And if it is a penny cheaper per mile to not use disc brakes, we are not using disc brakes. And he said that we're not talking about anything else, because the bean counters don't take into consideration the out of service criteria. Right. Okay, that's not what their job is. Their job is to count the money and be accountable for it. And when you have 10,000 trailers and you can save a penny or two a mile, at the end of the day, it's millions and millions of dollars. So a bean counter, his voice is like, it rules. The other people in the organization would have a real hard time arguing against that. Right. How are we spending $4 million or $5 million extra for this? How is this value? And I guess if the safety guys and the maintenance guys can make a strong enough case, they might win. But I doubt it, because money, all these organizations are run. The most important thing is shareholder value, whether it's a public or private company.
So I'm looking at the time, Chuck. We getting up close on time for tonight. Do you know who? Do you probably a conversation to have offline, but do we have anybody lined up for next week already? Or
yeah, we've got a couple, and one of the people I've been talking to that hopefully is going to join us is our friend that talks about. He's going to join us talking about. Jeff Hall, he's a private investigator, security consultant, and I'm hoping that him and I have another lawyer that I've been talking to as well down in Oklahoma, and he's got a real unique service for truckers that I'm very interested in. So it's going to be one of the two, depending
Okay.
on what the time is. So should be a good show either way. And this
Okay.
was fun, Rico. You know, we haven't done this in a couple of years, just you and I.
It's been a little while.
Yeah, it's been, you know, this has been, you know, I feel like, you know, I'm with an old friend just talking. If we were sitting,
It's
if we were
definitely
sitting
been
at
a
a
little while.
restaurant having dinner or in the, you know, in the car, or in the truck, running down the road, we'd be having the same conversation because we got a lot of
Absolutely.
people listening to us.
Absolutely. And one of the things, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, if you don't mind, we appreciate you guys for hanging out with us. But you know, we're back, and we're going to try to. We didn't get an opportunity. Chuck has a lot of stuff going on, and I have a lot of stuff going on. I'm in the middle of. I think we're both in the middle of some rehab projects on some properties,
Yeah.
and I tell you, we were going to try to get together and record a show like we did before. So we now have the ability to do that. So in the future, we're going to try to do our best efforts to try to make sure that we bring the show to you every week. Even if we have to record a show in advance and have one in the can, so that we can have one to provide for you guys. So if you please like, share, and subscribe on the channels. Tell a friend to tell a friend. We need all the help we can get to try to spread the word about the show and about the podcast, because you know, we try to share actionable, real information that you can actually use. And the best thing about it is it's free. We're not
Yeah.
charging for a course. We don't have a course. I mean, we could, if we wanted to. I'm pretty sure that it would be no problem for us to sit down with a writer and come up with a course and come up with some real generic and practical stuff and put out to sell you guys. But we're doing this thing. We want to see everyone successful.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is success doesn't always have to be 50 trucks.
No.
Success can be whatever your definition of success is. Don't get into a situation where you're comparing yourself to somebody else. What does success mean for you? Keeping the doors open and being able to stay in business is a success.
Yes, because a lot of them didn't.
Success. So don't get. Sometimes we get in a bad habit of comparing what it is that I have to what somebody else has, and I really wouldn't want you to think about that in terms of success. Think of you define what success is for you.
100%. Rico, you don't know the whole story. You know, you quite often you see somebody and maybe they've got a nice car, or they've got a big home, and you go, you know what? I want what that guy has. Well, maybe
Right.
you don't want what he has because the banker's calling every week, you know, ready to repossess the car, and the mortgage company's calling every week looking to foreclose the mortgage. You really want what that guy wants?
And I think back to the old commercial. It was a guy had a new car. He was out cutting his lawn, and he was like, he was just riding around. He looked at the camera. He said, "I'm in debt up to my eyeballs."
Yeah, you know, you can make a lot of money with one truck if you operate it well. But you need to, if you want to make money at this, the first thing you need to do is know your costs.
Understand that cost. Get the
Yeah.
breakdown. Get that fixed cost. Get that variable cost. Go
Yes.
back in the archive. As a matter of fact, if you have a problem doing it, if you don't understand what it is, if you don't understand how to do it, go back in the archive. We had a guest on the show, the trucking CEO, CFO, the trucking
Yes.
CFO. Go back to that show. Check that show out. Get in contact with that guy if you need help with that, if you struggle with that. And get your numbers, get an understanding of what it is to get your numbers under control, to understand what it is on a cost per mile basis for your fuel, for your insurance, for your taxes. It's tax time is coming.
Rico, how much money are people putting away per mile or per kilometer in in a bank account. You better
Right.
have a bank account because you're going to need it. Okay.
Right.
These things break down. We all hear the stories of the guy with the, Series 60 that got 5 million miles on it. Well, that's great, but most of them don't last that long.
Right.
And they cost an awful lot of money to rebuild. And if you're not, it's no different than your home. You have
Gotta
to
start.
spend. I remember years ago, my one of my close friends, he's been a friend of mine since kindergarten, and this was when we were just kids and we were buying houses. We were all like 27, 28 years old. We were buying our first houses at 13% interest rates, but a house was only, our first house was $80,000. Today, that same property would sell for 2 million. It's just a
Absolutely.
different world up here in Canada. But
Absolutely.
I remember Wayne saying to me, every week I put $100 a week, which was a lot of money, in a bank account, and I saved $5,000 a year, and it's probably more than I need. But when I have to do a new roof or I have to replace the furnace, I don't have to go and get a bank loan.
Right.
And a truck is the same thing. You've got to be putting that money. You've got to be putting money away for every mile you travel because you're wearing down those major components.
Yep.
And you
So
got
Chuck,
tires.
let the people know how they can get in contact with
Yes,
you.
I have a
We're
new.
wrap this thing up.
I'm doing a very difficult thing right now, boys and girls, and you can assist me in this. My email address is changing because, as you know, I sold my shares in Traffics, and they've been very, very generous letting me keep a Traffics email. But I've got to transition out of it at some point, so now is the best time. So my new email address is very easy. It's just Chuck Snow 280. That's CHUCK SNOW 280 at outlook.com. Can't be any easier than that. And if any of our listeners need any help with anything, or you even want to get set up with a Traffics office, I still have an awful lot of friends there and know the owners, great people. I'd be glad to hold your hand and get you set up with the right people. If you're having some difficulties in your business or whatever, reach out to me, put a phone number on your email, and it would be my pleasure to help anybody. And with that, Rico, I'm going to let you back her in a hole for another week.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for hanging out with us. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you took a little time to hang out with us, and we're always grateful for you doing so. Like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend about the podcast. And until then, stay safe out there, everybody. Stay healthy. Keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and we'll talk at the same time, same place next week, God willing. God bless you and good night.
Catch you on the flip flop.